Hello everybody and welcome to Toyah at Home, and what a fantastic Toyah at Home it's going to be for the next hour. We've got a Sheep Farming in Barnet special to announce the release on December the 11th of this double CD with DVD special deluxe compilation with 30 additional tracks. This will also be accompanied with white vinyl, which is in limited edition, and the white vinyl is to celebrate these balls, which was the early warning system in 1978 at Farlingdales, which we had to break into and get the picture, and then I had to hide the film because we got arrested. So for the first question, and you've sent in absolutely wonderful questions, thank you so much. Gary Taylor, you say your favourite song is Neon Womb. What is it about and how did it come about? Well, Pete Bush, Joel Bogan and I started out by rehearsing in Pete Bush's music room in Whetstone, Barnet, 77 and 78. And every Sunday, because back then no one worked on Sundays, we'd meet in Whetstone and we would just write. I'd have a microphone, Pete would be on his keyboards, Joel on his guitar with his big speakers, and we would just keep going until we came up with songs. And Neon Womb came out of these sessions. And we wanted songs that caught the energy of the time. And that was, we wanted our audience to dance and dance and dance. And one of the ways of getting people to dance, and it still works today, is by building the tension with a really long intro. Thus, Neon Womb has this extended intro which builds and builds and then drops back again, then builds and builds and builds until it finally explodes. This song has always been a live winner, and it's still a live winner today. And I remember the lyric coming into my head because I was making a movie at the time with Katharine Hepburn. And I had to get from Battersea, where I had Mayhem, my warehouse, over to Wembley every morning, 6 in the morning. So I was one of the first people on the tube train at Victoria. And I'd often be in the underground tube train alone. And I can remember sitting there thinking, this is like a neon womb. And I thus was born my love of lyrical imagery. So a lot of my lyrics were more about imagery than they were about emotion. I just love the fact of the idea of a neon womb and what that means. It could mean anything, but it means something to everyone, and those meanings are individual. It's also one of the many songs about my very unresolved relationship with my mother, and about the fact that I was always told that when I was being me, I was lying, that I wasn't being me. It's not what I wanted to be. It's not what I should be. It's not how I was intended to be. So when I was just being natural and myself, which has always been quirky, I was always told I didn't exist. And I think this is why Neon Womb is so powerful, because people pick up on this tendency that people tell us we're wrong when we're being normal and who and what we are. So that is the background of this glorious song, Neon Womb, and we are going to open our first track on this wonderful hour of Sheep Farming in Barnet with the Toyah Band at O2 Islington with Neon Womb.
So out of touch with life and time, in the catacombs where nothing rises, city is as cold as fire. And this mother city calls me a liar. My mind is, woo-hoo. My mind was there beginning. See, I'm insane, I'm insane. My body is a neon world. I'm a neon world. Neon world. My heart so warm, my mind so warm, my body, it's a dream. Heart so warm, my mind so warm, my body, it's a truth. I'm a neon world. Neon's here, neon's there, neon's there and everywhere. Standing all alone in the neon world. Reminds me of my mother's lonely tune. Air in the city is as cold as fire. And this mother city calls me a liar. Woo-hoo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo-hoo. My mind is, woo-hoo. My mind was here beginning. Oh.
That was Neon Womb at O2 Islington with the Toyah Band. Now, this next question has been asked by so many people. It's been asked by Sharon Lee, Mark Evans, Chris Savage, Grant Leon, and Andrew Martin. And it's been the most asked question for this particular session. And that is, where did the title of Sheep Farming in Barnet come from? Well, Joel lived in Golders Green. And obviously, to get from Golders Green to Whetstone overland, you had to go through Finchley. And I ended up living in Finchley, 1982, for quite a while. And there was a sheep farm just off the 406 on the Finchley Road. And it just amused me so much that here we were in this massive conurbation of London and there was a farm. And I just thought the title of the album should be something that doesn't tie the album down to a particular style or a particular time. I wanted the title to be obscure, and I wanted people to ask me 42 years later, why did we call it Sheep Farming in Barnet? It was an enigmatic name, but it did exist. The sheep farm was in Barnet, and it was crazy. This was before petting farms. It was before people thought of farms being within cities, and I think the farm itself was revolutionary, and that is where the title came from. So to celebrate that, we are going to a new performance of Indecision, done by the Toyah Band in lockdown. This wonderful song, thank you Chris Wong, Andy Doble, John Humphrey, Mike Nichols for recording this in your studios, and for me singing it live. This is the wonderful Indecision. Enjoy.
Decide by indecision. Journey never
That was Indecision with the Toyah Band. I remember writing the lyric to that song. I was actually at home in Kings Heath, Birmingham, from a tour, and I had this idea of something that would be like a manic cut-up poem. I seek, deceiver of deception, creation of my deprivation. And I wrote that on my table in my bedroom while at home. There was still some sense of normality in the early days for me. When we toured Sheep Farming in Barnet and we toured Blue Meaning, I could still go home and sit and have a meal with my parents. All that changed radically once Anthem came out. But I remember sitting down in the bedroom that was my bedroom all of my life, in the house I was conceived and born in, writing, I will, I won't, decide by indecision. So that song means a lot to me. It takes me right back to my home life. Now, Colin McIntyre, you ask a fantastic question. Whose decision was it to put the Nostradamus prophecy on the back of Sheep Farming in Barnet? Well, Colin, these are the actual books. Anyone who watches my regular Toyah at home knows that we have about 16 libraries in this house. So that is the actual book it came from. I haven't marked it because I normally mark all my books. I am a big writer in books, and it was a trend in the punk time to get a book, no matter what it was, whether it was The Painted Bird or if it was Seasons in Hell, we would write notes. So books always had a kind of second life and a second meaning. But funny enough, this is the book I got the quotation from, but I haven't marked it. It's almost pristine. Another book that came out at the same time, The Cloning of Man, when cloning was really kind of pie in the sky. And then after Nostradamus, an exploration of what came true of the things he predicted. So the prediction was, and this is what Nostradamus wrote centuries ago, 2 steel birds will fall from the sky on the metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately a huge scattered flame leaps up. Within months, rivers will flow with blood. The undead will roam the earth a little more. I mean, if only we could take heed of that in the past centuries. So I chose that, and it links to how I like to write my lyrics. I'm very instinctive. I work in silence. Images come into my head. Words come into my head and I write them down. Some people would call that automatic writing. For me, it's just words create images. I am very much a filmic person in how I work. And this really struck me, this prediction, because of the technology he was predicting within what he was going to say about this disaster. So I decided to put it on. I'm also hugely against vivisection against animals, so that was on the back cover as well, and it was my form of protest. There were a lot of very brilliant punk artists at this time who were absolutely superb at home politics and at home things that had to change. With me, everything comes from a different angle. It's very fantasy based, and this was how I chose to put my political self forward. So Colin, thank you so much for that question. We are going to go to a performance of Waiting at the Rainbow, which came out of reading Nostradamus. And I just want to show you something. Everyone who watches Toyah at home knows I'm a hoarder. Thus, I've still got the books from '78, and thus, I've still got my stage shoes. They're so cute. They were so comfortable. Shoes were just so well made back then. So this is Waiting, and it's a song that kind of explains Nostradamus's prediction. I'm very passionate about this song. When I sing it, I just feel so much inner power. I love it. So please enjoy. This is our first step back nostalgically to archive footage of the Rainbow, and this is Waiting. And the musicians are Nigel Glocker, Joel Bogan, Adrian Lee, Phil Spalding, and me. I mean, it's just a glorious, glorious piece of footage. Enjoy.
Thank you. Someone's thrown me a present. Is it octopus? It feels wet. This one's called Waiting. Waiting.
That was Waiting at the Rainbow. What a glorious walk down memory lane for me. That was a big night in my life. It was a legendary show. And to play the Rainbow was such an honour. The first time I ever went to the Rainbow was at a jam concert, and I walked backstage and Mark Bolan and his wife Gloria Jones passed me on the stairs, and it was like, oh my God, it's Mark Bolan. It was just such a great venue. Everyone played there and I got to play there, which is fantastic. So this is, as you probably know by now, double CD, DVD, deluxe edition of Sheep Farming in Barnet, which is what this show is all about today. So we had to get this ready during lockdown, which meant I couldn't get together face to face in a room with the Toyah band to record. So what we're going to show to you now is the DVD interview, part of a taster of the interview I did with Cherry Red about the making of this album, and also my wonderful neighbour here where I live, who is part of a musicians pod we all created in lockdown so that we knew that we were all safe and couldn't infect each other with COVID and all of that, is Nigel Clark of Dodgy. And Nigel agreed to come in and he learnt 3 songs with me and he was just breathtaking. His version is so good because he's a lot younger than me. To hear his take on this next song, which again predicts what became of our lives with IT and computer and AI, his take on this is, He walked into the room and he said, wow, this is a future song, isn't it? Because the lyrics are about computers living our lives. So here's a clip from the DVD interview that I did for Cherry Red, and it's followed by myself and Nigel Clark performing Computers. Computers came about because literally everyone I knew was earning money being a computer programmer. And I didn't understand what a computer programmer was. So my partner at the time, Jem Howard, explained to me that these people are going through the night just programming binary into microchips, and they're creating the future. Well, I mean, that was just unthinkable. Back then, you didn't have mobile phones, you didn't have faxes, you didn't have anything other than a transistor radio or a telephone mast. I don't think we even had microwave ovens back then. So the thought that binary could turn into a completely new world and separate world was pure science fiction. So when I came up with the lyric for Computers, it was complete fantasy. That one day you will be able to save your life into a non-biological organism, and it will remember you for eternity. That was complete fantasy. Computers started its life very early in the band's career. I think we demoed it twice before we were even signed. We demoed it in Cambridge, and I think we probably demoed it somewhere else. So when we got into Chapel Warner to make the album, Pete Bush was already putting sequencers on it. I'm not sure if Keith Hale just pushed it further, so the sequencers were like, for me, they're like waves hitting the shore, going backwards and forwards. And Joel saw it as an opportunity to use Spanish guitar rather than electric guitar. And what I really love about this song is the romanticism of the Spanish guitar, because I think it kind of put pathos into the story. And I think it is just so right. Rather than have something that is blindingly electric, suddenly you've got this rather beautiful romantic interlude when you're talking about something that potentially was terrifying. Hello, I'm Toyah, and I'm with my good friend Nigel Clark on guitar, and we're performing for the first time in about 40 years Computers off Sheep Farming in Barnet.
Christ, all my friends, they died. I watch my heroes tape their memories. I broke down, I cried. At least they'll change us history. You know that's something before they go. Bring on the computers, the ones that cannot lie. Tape every gray cell, every scene and every side. You can be my friend now. Stay until I die. And when I do go, computer can live my life. Bring on the computers, the ones that cannot lie. Tape immortalized. The time it drags so slowly, I'm slowly losing my mind. Computers, oh, they talk to me. I can hear them now. They're laughing at me.
That was Computers with the wonderful Nigel Clark from the band Dodgy, who happens to live 6 doors down from me. And we love working together. We're actually talking about writing songs together because he loves punk. So let's see what happens. Now, that performance of Computers is on this, and also the interview clip is on the DVD within this package as well. So this is a really great question from Mark Taylor. Mark says most of the songs for Sheep Farming in Barnet were already written and have been performed on tour. But Victims of the Riddle was written in the studio at the end of the recording sessions for Sheep Farming in Barnet. How did it come about, and why was it the first single? And was that a controversial choice, as most of the band weren't actually on this track? Well, I remember this track coming about once Keith Hales had come into the session. Making Sheep Farming in Barnet was quite a fractured experience because there was Joel Bogan, Pete Bush and myself. We were the permanent members and the main writers. But we went through quite a few band member configurations before we got to Steve Bray and Charlie Francis joining the band. So when we had finished the sessions for everything that we'd written and taken on the road, Keith Hale and I were in the Marquee Studios, I believe. It might have been the Chapel Studios, but I remember doing this, I'm sure, in the Marquee Studios. And it was about 1 a.m, and I wanted to do something experimental with my voice, which was intended as a B-side, where I use my voice a bit like a wind instrument or something that is played that has very quick movement. So Keith Hale set up and that was looped, and that's all I had. And Steve James and Keith Hale were in the master room, and I was in the vocal booth. Actually, it could be Chapel Studios. I've got a memory of this now. And I just improvised for 20 minutes. And this is one of the additional 30 tracks on the CD because it's breathtaking. It is absolutely breathtaking. And then Keith Hale and Steve James took that vocal away, cut it up and turned it into something that could be presented as an album track. And Joel Bogan came in and did a guitar solo, very long guitar solo on it, very descriptive and very brilliant. And when it came to putting the album together, because you have these big meetings with the record company and usually the whole band, where you sit down and you decide what was the best order of songs to take the audience on a journey through the album, which is why I was ambassador of National Album Day this year, because that journey, track by track, is a really beautiful experience to have. And may we never lose that art form, because it's as much part of the art of the album as the actual songs. So when we were doing the track listing and how to do the layout of the album, Victims of the Riddle did actually stand out as being quite like nothing else, but also very much part of the synthesizer movement, which was breaking big thanks to Human League, Martin Ware, Phil Oakey, and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. They were all bringing the synthesizer into the fore. And I felt very strongly that that was something we needed to represent us, because we always were keyboard and synthesizer led, with Joel playing both rhythm and very strong lead guitar. And everyone agreed. And we also had changed the name to Toyah, because I was a front person while Blondie was doing so well, and Blondie was very much Debbie Harry. But we thought, rather than being, I think one of our names was Ninth Illusion in the early days, we thought we'd just become Toyah, because everyone does focus on the singer. And we agreed that we would put Victims of the Riddle out as a pretty groundbreaking sound and a very ground indie breaking approach to how singles were going to be released and what they were going to be. Because we weren't being forced to be commercial, we were signed as a punk band. But the thing is, we'd moved into the synthesizer technology. And the cover is, I know it's a very controversial cover, and if you don't know the history of it, it's even more controversial. And this is an actual museum, Guanajuato in Mexico. And it's a town that used to murder people that came across the border into the town, and they'd hang them on posts and they'd become mummified in the sun. I mean, this place was pretty much a place of mass killing. And my feeling was, and this also moves into the album Blue Meaning with the song Mummies, that every one of these mummies, which are now in a museum in Guanajuato, is that every one of those has a story to tell. And I wanted them to be represented, thus the cover of the baby and the title Victims of the Riddle. And I know it was controversial, but in a time of punk where everyone wanted to shock people into an awakened state, it was pretty much accepted, which is quite unusual. It wouldn't be accepted today. So that is what that was all about. Now, after this exclamation, there's only one thing we can move to now, and that is a performance of Victims of the Riddle at the Rainbow. And thank you for your questions.
It's called Victims of the Riddle.
victims of the riddle at the glorious Rainbow in Finsbury Park. And on stage was Joel Bogan, Adrian Lee, Nigel Glocker and Phil Spalding. What an amazing lineup. Jeremy Richards, you asked what were the most memorable concerts of this particular period. Jeremy, they were all absolutely breathtaking. We started off small. One of the very first gigs we did was at Joel's High School. Very, very posh high school in Golders Green. And I think we did a lunchtime concert. I found it terrifying. I know Will Self, the writer, was in the audience and that was one of his first concerts. But that won us a following. And then we did a synagogue down the road. But slowly, our reputation grew, and the most amazing thing about our band was that we were pulling huge audiences into relatively small buildings. Back then you could play pubs. That was a healthy circuit. You could be a charting artist and do a pub tour. I wish it was like that now, and hopefully one day it might be again, because people really love live music. But we would be playing a pub, say in Whetstone, and 1,000 people would turn up. On one occasion, 2,000 turned up, and it became very evident that we were a growing, happening band. I have very favourite memories of being on the road with Charlie Francis, who was just the most fantastic bass player, but also the most politically turned on and intelligent and creative human being I've ever known. And he would take no rubbish from anyone at all. And one of the early gigs with him was, I think, Bath Assembly Halls. And back then there was a problem with the National Front turning up at gigs and recruiting, and they'd always go into the audience and go for the most vulnerable or the lonely or the smallest people. And this happened at this particular venue. And, you know, Joel's Jewish. We ain't going to stand for any of that. And I can remember Charlie Francis taking his bass off and he was just going in there. Joel was as well. And a mass brawl was breaking out. We had to stop the show about 5 times. Eventually the police came and they took us off the side of the stage, and there was a gentleman's loo at the side of the stage, and we were pulled through the window of the gentleman's loo into a bus and taken away from the venue. These were very, very passionate and exciting times. There was another occasion, and I think it was Manchester University, where we'd already done an 1.5-hour set to a raging, screaming, happy audience. And they wanted more and more encores. And I remember Phil Spalding saying to me, "I've got to go to the loo. I'm going to be sick." And we were on the 5th encore, and by this time we had to start repeating songs we'd already done. So we got buckets on the stage, the band took their tops off, and we just literally did the show again with Phil's head in a bucket. And that was because of the heat. These shows generated incredible heat as well as incredible passion. And I have very happy memories of this period. I think for me it was one of the most exciting times of my life, because so much was going on, so much was unpredictable, and everything was fulfilling. Every end of the day, I sat back and I felt that feeling of fulfillment, because we were on a tide of something. We had no idea what it was, but we were being picked up by the tidal wave and carried. And it's a really great honour to experience that. But I will never forget the mayhem. When we first went out, we didn't have security, and it became very evident that we were starting to need stage security because the stage invasions were so huge. I loved it. It was fabulous. A song that came out during this time, and it was around the time I was doing Quadrophenia, and I think it was one of the songs that we played to Safari Records when they came to see us do a showcase on the day they signed us. And this is Bird in Flight. And it's a wonderful song, and we want to play it for you now because I know a lot of you have great memories that go with this song. So please enjoy Chris Wong, Mike Nichols and the late great Colin Hines of China Crisis playing for you at Trading Boundaries, wonderful Trading Boundaries, Bird in Flight. Enjoy.
He runs to the water's edge to feel the sea, to smell the air, to feel he's free. He does not really need to see. To this unhappy child, he's a no-no. No, he'll never see. Told about water, told about fire bites, told about birds. They're wild and free. They're everything he dreams to be. Everything his mind can see. No, oh, he's a no-no. No, he'll never see water, animals slaughtered, never see daylight, never see fire. Alone in the dark, his mind sets him free. He becomes wild and free. Birds in the trees, I see, they can revive. I see my mama, she's a liar, flying higher, screaming to my mama, you're a liar. Yes, oh, I'm a yes. Now my eyes can see up through the clouds, out past the sea, out my bedroom window, over the city, to my home in the sky. I wanna cry. A letter to Mom says, goodbye, Mom, goodbye. Remember how I cried, you said I lied. You didn't believe me. I can walk the walls, grow 10 feet tall, touch the ceiling, be a special child. I rise to my feet, I walk through my wall, I turn the corner, grow 10 feet tall. I run to the water's edge, and I'm standing on the cliff edge. I run back a few feet, I turn, I run to the cliff edge, 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 run to the cliff I'm a bird in flight. I'm a bird in flight. I'm wild and free. I'm wild and free. I'm a bird in flight. I'm a bird in flight. I'm wild and free. I'm wild and free. Thank you.
That was Bird in Flight at Trading Boundaries with Chris Wong, Colin Hines and Mike Nichols. Thank you, boys. That was brilliant. Now, Kevin Milsom, with technology increasing so much over the last 40 years, would I have changed anything about the specific production about this fabulous album? Well, I agree with you, Kevin. This is a magical, stunning album. And I think I would change nothing about it. We were on the cusp of a technical revolution. We were still working in analog, which meant that we had to edit tape by hand. I can remember the engineer in the studio, we'd decide to take 2 bars out of something, just splicing the tape together with a razor blade. It was always terrifying because if anything went wrong, you would have lost the whole of that song. It was a fabulous time to be in the studio because there was so much experimentation that we could create ourselves. We, on this album, only used 1 24 track, but by the time we moved to Blue Meaning and Anthem, we started to use 2 24 tracks and did a bounce down technique where that you just kept bouncing tracks down and then building, which meant I could do up to 20 vocals if I wanted to. the experimentation on this album is so pure, it's so instinctive, it's so natural and totally uncontrived that I think that this is a magical piece of work. Steve James' work on it is just the best. In fact, I wanted Steve James to produce Desire, but he just lived in Australia, he wasn't available. Keith Hale's work on it was revolutionary, but Keith at the time, I think, inspired the synthesizer revolution that followed. He was so ahead of his time. So everything and everyone on this album was very, very special. I think the way the songs were written and the fact that we toured the songs so long before we went into the studio and we were so hungry for this album makes it what it is. I would not change it at all. All that I would change is that it has been swept from history for the past 42 years and has not been treated with the love and respect it deserves. And now it's with Cherry Red, and now we have this beautiful deluxe edition. If I could change anything, it would never have gone into some archive for 42 years. It deserves to be there with everything else. So thank you so much, Kevin, for that question. And as you can tell, I love this album. We are going to now go to a single that was out. I thought this was out in '79. It's a wonderful song that I'm not sure I'll ever perform live again. It's okay, it's just there on the PC kind of thinking of today, but so much of my inspiration did come from the Maasai tribes. I loved what they did, I loved their lifestyle, I loved their relationship with earth and animals, and Tribal Look is very much inspired by the Maasai, and we don't really go there these days, but this is a song that went straight to #1 in the indie charts when it came out, and I know it's loved by many of the early Toyah fans. So this is Tribal Look at the Rainbow.
It's called Tribal Look. Take your tribal look, take your tribal stance. Don't look back, don't look back, never stood a chance. Run!
our album designer, Bill Smith, at the time, wonderful, wonderful album designer, would come to us and say, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? And I'd seen a picture of the early warning system, which is up in Yorkshire, and it's 3 balls. And if you take the picture at the right angle, there's this beautiful perspective. And I said, well, I want a picture of that, but my head is the 4th ball. And in those days, you couldn't Photoshop anything, or you didn't, like, you know, cut a picture out and stick it on. So we drove up to Yorkshire, Bill Smith, myself, my then boyfriend, Jem Howard, and we broke in because it was an RAF site, and it was the nuclear early warning system, so the public weren't allowed on. And I sat in the car, I did my makeup in the car, which actually was blue. I had a blue face, but Bill also managed to bring a blue light. And as we took the picture, we could see all these trucks, these security trucks coming towards us. And Bill said, keep going, we've got the picture, we've got the picture. And I said, right, give me the film. The film went down my pants. We got arrested and escorted off the site, but we got the picture.
That was Tribal Look at the Rainbow. I always loved performing that song, and I wanted my fans and my audience to be urban tribesmen. I wanted them to connect with that kind of inner instinct and their kind of relationship with nature and everything like that. And with Anthem, we moved more and more. Love is the Law, we moved more and more into being urban tribesmen and exploring that even more. And Tribal Look was the beginning of that. Here we were in this rather grey city, just wanting to kind of find the animal in us, the instinctive survivor in us. And that was the beginning of that. We've had, for this next question, quite a few people ask the same question. Dave from Wales and Sean Polly, you've both asked what's the inspiration between our movie, it's your favourite song and you love it live. And Sean Polly has asked, did I ever use the William Burroughs cut-up technique to do lyrics the way that Bowie did? Well, at the time of writing this, I was living in Mayhem, which was a very cold ex-British Rail warehouse with 1 window, 1 wash basin, 1 toilet, and 4 of us lived there. One of the other people that lived there was Eve, Adamant's wife. And we were permanently cold and we were permanently lacking in vitamin D. We never saw the sun. And we met this rather gorgeous boyfriend and boyfriend, wonderful, mega rich couple who had a dry cleaners in Finchley, but they lived in Eaton Square. And they knew that Eve and I needed feeding and we needed to go away for the weekend. So they took us to a beautiful cottage in Buckinghamshire, where we had warm beds, radiators, hot water, baths. It was fabulous. And even I think that they wanted the neighbours to believe that we were their girlfriends. This was a time when gay couples couldn't be that open. And we adored these people. We absolutely adored them. They were lovely. And on the Saturday night, they made us a lovely 3-course dinner. And then on the Sunday, we had a roast dinner. And then they took us back to Eaton Square and we spent Sunday night there. So on the Saturday, we were walking a lot around this cottage in Buckinghamshire, and there was a pregnant mare in the field, and there was also another foal in the field, and they were by a brook, and it really moved me. And there was a fir tree growing, so I went back to the cottage, got my pen and paper and wrote, "Let my light blast your shadow into the trees. Be my tall black ghost moved by the breeze. Shine unmoving into the sky. Watch this world like a vast green eye." And then, of course, walking in a garden where a pregnant mare is. It was all about that weekend. But also, it was, how can I put this? Sometimes I like to try and sum up the future or kind of bring the future into my vision. And it moves into a futuristic vision, which was pretty bleak, all about deserts and war in deserts. And that's what it is. It's a surrealist song, but it's also got the greatest bass line and the best song live because it makes you want to move, and I just love music that makes you want to move. Did I use the cut-up version, William Burroughs cut-up version? No, I didn't, because I felt I would rather search for an image that I want to relate to and then put that image into words. So if I was to use any form of cut-up version to write a song, I would do it from a book of photographs or a book of paintings by anyone, surrealists, naturalists, kind of from Picasso through to Hockney. I can just look at their pictures and those convert into words for me. So that's probably my version of Bowie's cut-up way of writing lyrics. His image is so powerful for me. So thank you very much for that question, and thank you for liking our movie so much. And what can we do for you now? Well, obviously, this is the Toyah Band and me in lockdown, new recording, never seen before, our movie. Enjoy.
Shadow into the trees. Be my tall black ghost by the breeze. We shine a movie into the sky. Watch this world like a far screen eye. I'm walking in a garden, and the clock
was our movie, and thank you to the Toyah Band for being so brilliant. It has been so dark this week. I am actually by a 6 foot by 7 foot window and there is no light whatsoever. I mean, this is probably one of the darkest seasons I've known in a long time. It's been cloudy for ages, so I've got artificial light and daylight because it's just, whoa, this is, I could almost imagine I'm in Norway or Sweden or something. There's been so little light in the past week. Now, one of the questions I've had is from Gabriel Pike, and it's about shoestring. It's a lovely question. There are several versions on the new CD set originally recorded for shoestring, including dance. Was the shoestring episode written with you and the band in mind? Do you know, that I don't know, but what I will say is shoestring launched us into the stratosphere because they used the backing track of Victims of the Riddle as dramatic background music in all the chase sequences. They used dance and many other songs off this. And I was playing Tallulah, a singer who was being ripped off by her manager. And it was made for me, but I don't think it was written for me. It was one of those magical things about this time where everything fell into place. It's almost impossible to describe how everything that happened was like a gift from up there. We were in the right place at the right time, and shoestring was one of these experiences. Also in it was Christopher Biggins, who I was about to do The Tempest with. Everything was connected and worked together so beautifully. Trevor Reeve was fantastic to work with. We were given the opportunity to record a live performance with our fans there, and I was acting as well. It was a dream come true, one of the most special events in my life, and the music sounded so good with the storyline and the kind of images, and it really, for me, explains why I'm an image writer. When I heard and saw the music on screen like that, with a script and with great actors, I thought, that really works. It works so well. So thank you for that question. I have no idea if it was written with me in mind, because I didn't get asked to do it until about 2 weeks before we were actually shooting, and we were shooting in Weston-super-Mare. And what was very beautiful about doing this particular episode, my father first saw my mother, who was a dancer, on stage at the pier in Weston-super-Mare, fell in love with her immediately, carved his name on the stage door and waited for her. My mother was probably about 18. My father would have been about 20, he's probably about 29. He'd been away in Egypt for the war for 6 years. He crossed between Israel and Egypt during the whole of the war. He was on a gunship on the Suez Canal and in the Mediterranean. So he'd come back from this, and he was living the life, and I think he was in Weston-super-Mare with a different woman, but he saw my mum on stage, and she was a dancer who opened for Max Wall in his variety show, so she toured, and my father ended up following her around the country until she agreed to marry him. And at that point, my mother had no parents. She had a chaperone, and my father used to have to get the chaperone very, very drunk to be alone with my mother. So for me to be in Weston-super-Mare shooting shoestring meant so much to me, because it really meant the world to my parents. And that was a lovely, lovely opportunity. And thank you very much for that question. And here we have the song in question that you've asked about, the many versions of Danced, and it will have many versions more because it's just a great song. This is the Toyah Band at O2 Islington with Danced. Enjoy. Chris Ron, why don't you just start this one? Oh, Andy Doble, over to you.
I love you, strange man.
That was Dance at the O2 Islington with the Toyah Band. Thank you guys for that. We come to the last question, which is from Julie Wheeler. If I could ever make a video, or could have made videos back then, for any of the songs on Sheep Farming in Barnet, which song would I choose? Julie thinks I'd choose Race Through Space. Well, actually, looking at the album, I would probably go for Neon Womb because it's so expressive and so suits my physicality. And we could have made it in an underground station, which I think are wonderful places for making film because they both look very disorientating because you get snowblind in them. They all look the same, but also great horror films are made in tube stations. So you could use the tunnels and the tunnels could light up and strange things could come out of the tunnels. I would love that for Neon Womb. I also think Indecision would make a fabulous video because the sheer acting skill needed to be that indecisive and the quick editing. I think we could have done something a little bit Talking Heads with that song. There's so many beautiful visual songs on here. Julie, you also asked what was the inspiration for Race Through Space. 42 years ago, everything was hearsay about the future. People trying to predict what computers would do to our lives. We'd already put a man on the moon, but we'd never done anything like it since. And there was this disconnection with the future, I think, during the 70s that we had in the 60s. And the 70s, we were focusing on different things. The world was changing radically. There was there was the punk revolution. You also had the glam rock revolution. But we didn't know where technology was going to take us in the future. We only had programs like Star Trek, and there was a program on BBC One at 7 o'clock which was all about future gadgets. It was absolutely brilliant. I think it was presented by Raymond Burke. It was stunning, but everything was hearsay. And Race Through Space is one of those songs of just imagining what it would be like if we were actually able to regularly go into space, use space, decide to spend part of our lives in space. And that's what it's about. And it's about discovering that other planets have made the same cock-ups as us, and hopefully there's other planets who've got it right. So it's all about that connection. And who knows, my life has changed unbelievably in 62 years. When I was 3 years old, we didn't have radiators in the house. We didn't have electricity to cook food with. And I don't think we even had a fridge. So look at our lives now. And Race Through Space is just very much one of those future projection songs. I want to say thank you to everyone watching and for all of you who've sent in your questions and for showing how passionate you are about this album. And there are many of you out there who love this album. They love this period in my career. They love this time in their lives. It's precious. We're not going to mess with it. This is the original, real deal with lots of added footage and recordings. It's been put together by Craig Astley, myself and Joel Bogan over a period of 4 years. Danny Keane has also been involved as well, and Alan Sawyer has helped design. The team has been an immaculate, dedicated team. So thank you to everyone. I also want to thank my band, the Toyah Band, who've played this music for 20 years and along with me have kept it alive in what has been a real struggle to persuade the industry that this is one of the important bands of this particular part of the decade, one of the important albums of this particular part of the decade. For this to be coming out on December the 11th, you know, I can go to my grave feeling a little bit more at ease. And I feel the same way about Blue Meaning, Toyah, 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 Anthem, The Changeling, Love is the Law, which are all going to be released. They deserve their moment in history. And thank you, Cherry Red. So everybody, I'll see you next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to Craig Astley and Darren. Shortt, who make all of these shows possible. I love you all, and everyone who's been following me at home, Toyah and Robert. You have made this year one of the most special years of my life, and thank you. I wish you love, luck and happiness. We are going to go out with, of course, Race Through Space at Islington O2 Academy. See you next week. Big love, big thank you, and enjoy.
Do you fancy a bit of punk? Shall we go back to Sheep Farming in Barnet? This is Race Through Space. Please show me your place. We race through space like a dying race. You